Environmental Management Committee. Today is October 16th, 2017. It's about 1:35 in the afternoon. I'm Councilmember Elle Cochran, the committee chair. And at this time, please silence all cell phones or any noise-making devices. And currently in committee, we have Councilmember Bob Carroll.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Aloha. And Mr. Alika Atai.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. Mr. Ricky Wakama. Aloha. And non-voting member, Ms. Kelly King.
Aloha, Chair.
Hi,
I just want to let you know, I do have to leave at 2, but I just wanted to support your committee items.
Okay, thank you for being here. And Don Guzman and Mr. White and Ms. Sugimura will be joining us later. I should be having Department of Public Works Director David Good here, possibly Ms. Rowena Dagdagandaya, and from Department of Environmental Management, Mr. Eric Nakagawa from Wastewater, and also we do have Corporation Counsel, Ms. Rochelle Thompson. Aloha, thank you for being here. And from committee staff, we have Mimi Desjardins, our legislative attorney, acting like Vanna White right now. And then we have Committee Secretary Stacey Vinere, and Hana, we should have Don Lono, Lanai, Ms. Fernandez, and on Molokai, Ms. Alkhan. So at this time, we have 3 items on the agenda today. IEM 45, oxybenzone, OCTINOXATE, and the effects on the environment. IEM 47, amending chapters 16.18b, 16.20b, and 16.26b, Maui County Code, relating to Department of Public Works fees, amounts, or rates. Also, IEM 10, lower Nahiku Bridge health and safety concerns. So at this time, I'll open up the floor for public testimony. Please sign up with the desk out front, and also limit testimony to items on the agenda today. And you will be given 3 minutes to testify. The lighting system is out of order at the podium, so we'll have staff notate when the 2.5-minute mark is up, and then you have 30 seconds to complete. With that, please state name, any organization you may be representing when testifying. Before we call down our first testifier, I want to recognize Vice Chair of the committee, Mr. Don Guzman.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Aloha, thank you for being here. And so, Ms. Desjardins.
Hey, Madam Chair. First testifier is Jeff Bagshaw, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Ann Rilero.
Good afternoon, Maui County Council. Just a little street theater. This is what I look like at work, just to make a point. I'm with the Hihikinau Natural Area Reserve.
And just speak directly into the mic, Mr. Bagshaw. Thank you.
Sorry. That sounds better. When I first had the chance to speak with the county council before, I shared with you how our education efforts are going down at the reserve, the one small piece of land where so many people come to snorkel. And I had to leave out one piece that I would like to share with you now, and I hope it might be useful for you as well in these deliberations. And that is that one of our biggest challenges when we work with the public is the perception that what they do doesn't really matter. It's the collective impact and the individual actions that add up, which is our biggest challenge in communicating with people. To get around this, and we often hear, it's just me, it's just today, I'm just using a little bit of sunscreen. When I dusted off, I decided to tackle this by going back to an old college text on environmental estimation. This is a discipline that helps you understand a bigger problem, even if you can't get the figures exactly, because some of the variables are there's too many variables to measure exactly. For instance, how much sunscreen is going into the ocean around Maui every day? So give you what we came up with, and that is, first, just imagine that about 10% of Maui County residents and visitors, just 10%, go into the ocean around Maui every day. We hear from people, about half will say, I don't wear anything anyway. So take that number, break it in half, and then assume that people put on about 1/2 ounce of sunscreen, which is less than the recommended amount for most of these products. Take all that together, and you end up with about 55 gallons of sunscreen going into the water every day around Maui. 55 gallons, each and every day. Yesterday, tomorrow, today. Now, and to communicate that with folks, to give them a visual idea, because our biggest challenge, as I said, when you say parts per trillion, people's eyes glaze over. You say, how many drops per swimming pool? They still can't imagine it. But we put that information on a poster and put it on an old 55-gallon drum that washed ashore, an old plastic industrial barrel, and that really communicates very strong. So I just want to put that to you, that if we saw an industrial polluter come and do that here in the ocean, we'd have the EPA stop them. But these products are being sold in Hawaii by manufacturers not in the islands, and it's going into our ocean one bottle at a time, one person at a time. I'm sad to report in closing that we now test at 1,884 parts per trillion in the reserve for oxybenzone and I can't say it now, which is up, even though we have done all our education efforts. So thank you for moving forward on this.
And thank you for your testimony today. Members, any need for clarification of our testifier? Ms. King, and I would like to recognize Ms. Yukile Sugimura. Aloha. Good afternoon. Ms. King. Ms. King?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Bagshaw. Sorry. There's a question for you.
I have a quick question for you.
Just come back to the podium, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And first, I want to thank you for being out at the preserve, because I know I've seen you out there, and it's great to have that information right at the entry point. Unfortunately, most people already have their sunscreen on by the time you see them. But you mentioned the 1,084 parts per million is where we're at now. What would be a safe level if there was a safe level?
It's said that it has to be 64 parts per trillion. We
64 parts per trillion.
Yeah, we are at 1,084. That's our latest result. So we are 17 times the toxicity level for corals.
Okay, and just because I wanted to follow up on something that a testifier mentioned weeks ago on the same issue, and that's the effects on human health. Do you disseminate any information on the effects of human health from these kinds of chemicals?
That's a pretty broad topic, and my range of expertise is limited to the ocean, but I can tell you, and one way we address this with the public is that it sounds crude, but we remind people, if you've already got it on, please don't pee in a big pool, because these chemicals go through your system in 20 minutes.
Wow.
And that's typically food for thought for folks, because that means through your liver and kidneys in 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I just always wondered why anybody would want to use something on their skin or on their body when it's killing our our reef. So anyway, thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Yes, Mr.
Yes, thank
Guzman.
you.
Oh, did you have a question?
Yes, I had a question. On the studies that you indicated, are those studies, who conducted the studies, and were those published?
Hermeticus Laboratory. I can get you the email address
Okay.
for the latest details. The initial study was done in 2015, and that's when we tested at 864 parts per trillion,
Okay.
and now we're at 1,084.
Okay. Thank you. If we could get that information, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next testifier.
Okay, the next testifier is Anne Valero, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Amy Finaro.
Good afternoon and aloha, Committee Chair Elle Cochran and Vice Chair Don Guzman and committee members. My name is Anne Valero, and I recently joined the nonprofit Maui Nui Marine Resource Council as their Communications, Community Outreach, and Development Manager. Every Sunday, I swim with a group of friends along the South Maui coast from Malawaka Beach to Little Beach and back. And I've been doing this for about 7 years. And during this time, my friends and I have really been sad to witness widespread coral bleaching, coral death, and far fewer fish. During the past year, we were all shocked and horrified to learn that the sunscreen brands that we've been using to protect our skin also contain 2 chemicals that have been demonstrated to harm and kill corals, even in small concentrations. We found that these chemicals can cause coral bleaching, damage to coral DNA, and harm to coral larvae. These chemicals, oxybenzone and octinoxate, are found in most of the sunscreen brands in Maui's big box stores, the drug stores, convenience stores, and supermarkets. The folks in my swim group and I found and switched to alternatives that are mineral-based without nanoparticles. And I can tell you they work great even after hours in the ocean. We also found that rash guards and even swim tights provide a safe and colorful cover-up from the sun. So most visitors to Maui, and I would venture many Maui residents, do not know about the destructive impacts of oxybenzone and octinoxate to our reefs. And even if there were signs at the beaches, by the time people get to the beach, they're not going to skip their sunscreen application or leave their hard-earned parking spot to go and seek out a safer brand. So I'm convinced that the only way to stop oxybenzone and octinoxate from contaminating our oceans and harming our reefs is to stop the sale of personal care products that contain these ingredients. There's sound conclusive evidence that oxybenzone and octinoxate are harmful to corals. Therefore, I strongly support the proposed Maui County ban on personal care products containing these ingredients. Maui Nui Resource Council also strongly supports this proposed ban. So I urge you, you have the power to act on behalf of coral reefs, and I urge you to move this proposed ban forward and to support its passage through the Greater County Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any need for clarification of our testifier? Seeing none. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Our next testifier is Amy Finaro, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Lloyd Johnson.
Aloha, County Council members. Thank you for listening to all of us today. My name is Amy Finaro, and I'm an ocean advocate and hardcore snorkeler. I've lived in the islands for 9 years. I'm speaking today as a private citizen, but for work, I write most of the online content and run the social media accounts for a large snorkel rental company. I consider myself a buffer between our natural resources and our visitors. I do my best to explain how and why to respect the locals, the land, and the ocean. As you may imagine, I'm here to ask you to pass the bills to ban the sale and use of personal care products containing oxybenzone and octinoxate. We know that these chemicals harm coral and marine life. Beyond that, I think the main reason we need to ban these products rather than just offering alternatives on the shelves is because even if people do realize some sunscreens can harm the reefs, most people don't want to look at labels, especially when they're rushing to relax on their vacation. The great thing is we have several alternatives ready to go. When I snorkel, I wear a rash guard and surf shorts because they're easier to use than even spray sunscreen. You don't have to wait for them to sink into your skin. If they did that, you'd have a big problem anyway. And once you're out, you don't have to scrub yourself for 10 minutes to get rid of that tacky residue. Please do pass these bills on to the next step. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is yet. To ban the sale and use of sunscreens containing these two chemicals. Our reefs face many threats from many quarters, but this is one that we can eliminate now. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your testimony. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none. Thank you. Sure. Let's. I'll go to Hannah right now. Ms. Lono, do you have anyone there to testify? Ms. Lono, are you there in Hana?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. This is Lono in Hana office, and I have Moses Bergao to testify on IEM 10.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Moses Bergao. I'm a resident of Lower Mexico, and I see the issues on the Lower Lake Bridge. It's on here, and the status, I guess the town is going to find out about it. But basically, I am totally against it. Having been on the agenda at this time, for the reason that on the 26th of October, there's a public hearing concerning the medical community center. And I believe that is a whole lot of items to be put in on the community at this time. So I'd like to ask that the county please direct this item, this agenda here about the health and safety till we resolve the issues that's connected on the 26th, the public meeting held in Maui. Thank you very much, and I hope the county takes highly consideration in the community itself, in the health of it. And I'm not speaking of physically, but the emotional turmoil that has and is still happening in Mexico. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bergao. Members, any need for clarification of our testifier? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your time today. Ms. Lono, did you have anyone else there to testify?
Hold on 1 second. Did you want to testify? Okay. State your name. IEM 10.
Okay.
Michael Barron. I just cross the bridge. And so my comments are, right now the bridge is very, very dangerous to walk across. The tourists walking across there, they could collapse, somebody could get injured at any time. So there should be some kind of at least a walking bridge or something over it. That's my first point. The second point is I talked to a lot of tourists that come down there, and they're a lot better off walking down there than they would be biking down there. That last section of it is very, very beautiful, and they simply wouldn't see that. And so for the tourists, it's much better way as a walking bridge than driving it. A quick point is that for somebody that lives there or the people living around there, if it's a bridge and people go all the way down, people just come all the way from town and everything, go down there, bridge and party, and some bad people can show up and we can ripped off things to happen as it is. You can park their cars at the end there and afterwards not getting ripped off. So my next point is that if the county wants to really rebuild it and build up the code and everything, it's only going to cost them $500,000 to $1 million for a stone bridge, and it would be much easier to just let people in the community put maybe a walking bridge over there, a wooden bridge, and then solve the problem as far as they're concerned. And whatever the problem is.
Okay, is that comments your testimony? Thank you. Members, any need for clarification of the testifier? Mr. Atai? Mr. Atai has questions for you. Mr. Atai.
I'm trying to get clear here. So you're suggesting and recommending that for safety reasons, you want the bridge. Yes.
Yes, can you hear Mr. Atai?
No, he needs to speak a little more loudly. We cannot hear him.
Okay. I can restate what he's saying also, but go ahead, Mr. Atai, and
I'm trying to be clear what he's saying is that for safety reasons, his recommendation is to have the bridge repaired for walking traffic. But the community's recommendation is not to repair the bridge so that there's automobile traffic going over it.
Sir, did you hear Mr. Atai's question? He wanted clarification on, are you looking for it to be repaired for walking traffic only and not cars? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that good, Mr. Atai? Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Members, any other need for clarification of their testimony? No? Testifier? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Ms. Lono, is that your last testifier at this time?
Testifier at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lono. And let me double check with Lanai. Ms. Fernandez, do you have anyone there to testify? Thank you. And over on Molokai, Ms. Alcon, do you have anyone there to testify?
Good afternoon. This is Ella Alcon on Molokai, and there's no one here waiting to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Alcon. Okay, we'll come back to the chambers.
Okay, the next testifier is Lloyd Johnson, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Lily Solano.
Aloha, my name is Lloyd Johnson. I organize a dive club with 500 plus members. Some of us are locals, some are snowbirds, some are visiting just for one time, but obviously we're all coming here for the coral reefs. We'd very much like that to continue. I think that the evidence is pretty strong that these chemicals are harming our reef, and so I would like to see their use discontinued, or at least the sale of them stopped within this county. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any need for clarification? Seeing none. Thank you.
Okay, the next testifier is Lily Solano, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Alisa Farmer.
Aloha, and thank you for having us. My name is Lily Solano, and I serve as the Education Director at the Maui Ocean Center. Every day, we have the opportunity to engage and interact with hundreds of people that walk through our park. Our mission is not only to educate about the different animals that inhabit our oceans here in Hawaii, but to create wonder and respect for these species. Recently, we've implemented sharing about the detrimental effects of sunscreen and some of these chemicals that are found in some of the sunscreens that are commonly used in our reefs here. So before I kind of go into that part, I wanted to share one quick aspect that I believe gets missed more often than not. Endemism is defined as an animal or plant being unique to a defined geographic location. The Hawaiian archipelago is the most isolated group of islands on this planet, located 2,300 miles from the nearest continental shore. This results in Hawaii being home to a large number of endemic species. An estimated 1/4 of plants, fish, and invertebrates found in the coral reef ecosystem can't be found anywhere else on Earth, which makes it very unique. Therefore, we need to protect these natural resources that are found here in our home. We need to take the right steps to ensure that we don't lose these species and educate our visitors and residents alike about the importance of the coral reef ecosystem. As new research is showing, we're learning the extent of these chemicals like oxybenzone that are found in our everyday personal care products. Too many threats like urbanization, overfishing, alien species, to name a few, are already threatening the well-being of our reefs. So today is a step in the right direction to address these issues. So we are in support of both organisms in banning the use of these two chemicals that we believe we know are harmful to our ecosystem. Our hope today will be that Maui will spearhead this issue the way it has led in other environmental issues. We can do better to educate our visitors and locals alike about the importance of our coral reefs. It's more than just a colorful underwater world that you get to experience. It drives the productivity of fisheries. It provides habitat and food for its inhabitants. It drives tourism and coastal protection from erosion. So coral reefs define our islands, and they do need our protection today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier is Elisa Farmer, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Betty Bellinger.
Well, aloha. My name is Elisa Farmer, head naturalist at the Maui Ocean Center. Today I'm here representing the Maui Ocean Center and to speak on behalf of our reefs. The Maui Ocean Center is more than just a visitor attraction. We are an educational institution, and our mission is to foster the wonder, understanding, and respect for Hawaii's marine life. One of our top priorities is to stay updated with current research in the marine science realm and interpret this information to the general public. In October 2015, a peer-reviewed article was published showing that oxybenzone and other chemicals found in sunscreen and personal care products are harmful to corals. As this research came into light, we began incorporating this topic into our daily presentations, advising guests to avoid using sunscreens containing these chemicals and overall prevent sunscreen pollution by minimizing the use and covering up with sun protective swimwear such as rash guards and hats. After sharing this information, one of the most common responses from guests is, why does the state allow the sale of these coral-killing products? Now, before I get into the reasons why these chemicals should be banned, I want to share with you some invaluable information about the biology of coral reefs. The habitat component of coral reefs is, of course, coral. Now, unlike terrestrial habitats, such as trees, sand, and rocks, coral is classified as a living animal. Stony reef-building corals that make up our reefs are colonial. They are made up of hundreds of thousands of tiny little soft-bodied animals called coral polyps. Each coral polyp eats, produces waste, and reproduces, just like you and I. When you look at a piece of coral, it's like looking at a family tree, because each generation grows on top of each other. However, coral is very slow growing. Here in Hawaii, the growth rate for coral is about 3 centimeters per year on average for most species. So what is the importance of coral? Well, it does a lot more than most people think. Coral provides a habitat protection and even food for our beautiful reef fish. Essentially, without the coral, there would be no reef fish. Globally, coral reefs provide many ecosystem services. To name a few, but not limited to, providing millions of people with a food source, protecting coastlines from storm surge and coastal erosion, providing jobs and income to economies such as ours through tourism. Now, going back to that common question, why does the state allow the sale of these coral-killing products? If our coral reefs disappear, it would result in a decline of fish, an increase in coastal erosion, and a drastic decline in tourism. The diversity of coral reefs is greater than that of rainforests, and the loss of that ecosystem would result in a full collapse of our ocean ecosystem. We need action now to prevent this from being that fate of our reefs and to protect our natural resources for the future generations. We know who the coral killers are, so let's book a Maui, and hopefully others will follow.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any need for clarification? Yes, Ms. King.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here and your colleague as well. I really appreciate that. Do you have the title of that peer-reviewed article you were talking about?
Yes, I do. It's the toxopathical effects of sunscreen, UV filter oxybenzone on coral, planula, and cultured primary cells, and its environmental contamination in Hawaii and U.S. Virgin Islands.
Can you send that to us?
Yeah,
so I don't have to write all that down?
Yeah, one of the authors is Craig Downs, so he does a lot of that. Craig Downs.
Downs? Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Send that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just FYI, FYI, Mr. Downs will be here next month.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
awesome.
he'll be here to probably speak on that report she just mentioned. Okay, next testifier.
Next testifier is Betty Bellinger, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Rosemary Robbins.
Aloha, members of the council, and thank you so much for considering this important issue. My name is actually Bet Bellinger, and I live in Kihei. And I've been a volunteer at the Hihikanau Reserve for 6 years now. But over the past couple of years, my main focus has been to educate visitors and residents alike about the use of chemical sunscreen and the damage it's doing to our coral reefs. Very few people are aware that this is even an issue, but when I have found that they are very receptive to the message and they're willing to do what's necessary in order to protect the reefs and the fish that they come here to see. And just like the lady that spoke before me, people often ask me, why does the state even allow this stuff to be sold? That's a good question. Why do they? And it just seems like a no-brainer that we would want to protect the marine environment and the tourism industry and the fisheries, and we're so dependent upon tourism. Banning oxybenzone and the other chemical that's mentioned it's a very good first step, but why not go a step further and ban the other chemicals that we know are also harmful to the coral reefs, which would only be allowing mineral-based sunscreens to be sold. The reserve sees nearly 500 visitors a day, which is just a drop in the bucket compared to the thousands of visitors across the island and on the beaches and in the waters. And I'm just one small voice talking to a handful of visitors. The only effective way to protect our coral reefs is to prohibit the sale of chemical-based sunscreens. Now, Maui County took the lead in banning the plastic grocery bags a few years ago, and the rest of the state has now followed suit. Well, let's take the lead again and start banning these chemicals that are destroying our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize Chair White. Thank you for being here, Chair White. Hello. Next testifier.
Okay, the next testifier is Rosemary Robbins, testifying on IEM 45 and 47, followed by Rob Parsons.
Good afternoon, everybody. Rosemary Robbins, concerned citizen. For many years, a lifeguarding instructor trainer by way of the American Red Cross and its program here in Hawaii. And prior to that, and here's the proof, when we only had PABA when we could get it, and that was through the military. We could get that here in Hawaii, where I was growing up as a child. It wasn't there. So certainly it's important that we have the protection that's available by way of scientific evolution that has happened. Thank you, God, for that's having happened. When I look at the item for today and item 45 of today's agenda, one of them talks about the sale of, and the other one talks about the use of. I'm concerned about how we're going to be able to address the sale of, because that's going to require some monitoring, that's going to require some stuff that's going to cost some money for enforcement. So we need to keep aware of that when we're dealing with these today. My first thought is to do item 2 on page 1. That's the statement saying to regulate the sale of personal care products containing oxybenzone and OCTINOXATE, and to promote the use of alternative products. That way we can come back to that if we need to be able to expand that, but at least it's not going to die on the vine. So, thank you. That
concludes your testimony, Ms. Robbins.
That was on that item on 45.
Okay.
And then over to page 2 of today's agenda. The committee is in receipt of County Communication 17362 from the Director of Public Works transmitting a proposed bill entitled "A Bill for an Ordinance Amending Chapters," and it gives the numbers in there. It cites item 17-362, which is dated August 16th, 2017, and it's a kind of communication from the Director of Public Works. I got that piece. And it says the purpose of the proposed ordinance is to remove all reference to specific Department of Public Works fee amounts or rates in the Maui County Code, and instead referencing the annual budget ordinance. When I went back and got the material on this, it's a little more expanded from what it's described. Huge money attached to for miscellaneous inspections, for having begun work without a permit here in Maui County. That definitely needs to be addressed. The inspections, but the additions that went in to what was already addressed in the late hours of the budget hearings earlier this year are just enormous. To get rid of those and all reference from them is something that I would caution us on. Get rid of those, definitely. In terms of destroying any indication that those did exist, those additional heavy-duty funding things, I'm not in favor of having those totally destroyed. I think there should be at least one copy archived with the recommendations that had come in from
2.5 minutes.
Thank you. From the director, and make sure that that is somehow archived where it can't get lost, because otherwise it's apt to come up and haunt us in the future. We're not going to be able to go back and recognize why it was amended for now. So yes, amend it. Make sure that there is at least one copy for history's sake. Remember, those of us who do not keep track of history are doomed to re-experience it. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony today.
You're welcome.
Next testifier is Rob Parsons, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Marge Bonar.
Aloha, Chair and members. My name is Rob Parsons. I serve as the County Environmental Coordinator in the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. As peer review, scientific studies conclusively link chemicals found in sunscreens and other personal care products to degradation of coral reef ecosystems. There's growing global awareness of the urgency to restrict sale and use of these products. Here on Maui, a surprising number of individuals and organizations are stepping forward to spread information and advocate for using safer methods of sun protection when swimming in our ocean. As you've already heard, many of them are here today. My hope is that this committee may move quickly to adopt one of the two ordinances in front of you today. To do so would be congruent with Governor Ige's Sustainability Initiative 30 by 30 Oceans target to effectively manage at least 30% of our priority ocean resources by 2030. It would send a strong message to visitors and residents alike that we as a county are striving to protect the natural resources that sustain us and the myriad of creatures that comprise these complex marine ecosystems. Last week, I attended the initial meeting of the Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission. Ironically, it was held at the Coral Ballroom at the Hilton Hawaiian Village in Waikiki. The information presented was sobering, and the challenges before us are daunting. It is clear that we must act swiftly to reverse the degradation to air, water, land, oceans, and all the species on this planet that depend upon them. Everything is connected is how eminent Canadian scientist David Suzuki summarized it when he spoke on Maui in 2007. He went on to state that human impacts upon the planet are so apparent and dramatic that we must take definitive action or risk collapse. Restricting these chemical compounds commonly found in sunscreens is one definitive action we can take. Once again, Maui County has the opportunity to lead by example through adopting legislation to keep these toxic substances out of our nearshore ocean waters. I invite you to list any concerns or questions you might need answered before you would be comfortable passing one of these bills. UHMC Sustainable Science Management intern Alicia Rittenberry is working with my office on this issue, and we will be happy to research and track down answers for you. We will also be doing outreach and education on Arbor Day, November 4th at Maui Nui Botanical Gardens. And also in November, we expect research scientist Dr. Craig Downs to be available at this committee to address the science behind the urgent request to regulate use of these products. It's clear there are numerous alternatives to oxybenzone and octinoxate sunscreens, including a number of really good made on Maui products. Several of Maui's snorkel boats are buying these reef-friendly sunscreens by the gallon and educating visitors not to use harmful ones. But this alone is not enough, and I can summarize here. We need legislation to keep harmful products off the retail shelves. Ultimately, administration of this ordinance can be handled by the Environmental Protection Sustainability Division of the Department of Environmental Management, and I know that new county code language has been drafted to establish a dedicated fund for this division. My hope is that in the next budget cycle, an operating budget and funds for the division chief may finally be approved so that EP&S division can finally begin to take shape. And in closing, I would say that good legislation can lead to positive behavior modification. In the near future, Maui may be able to market itself as a very eco-friendly visitor destination, touting numerous green initiatives adopted. Imagine that message artistically portrayed on another kind of sunscreen, a lightweight rash guard. Ocean-friendly and no toxic chemicals needed. In other words, restricting these harmful personal care products need not be deemed punitive. There are ample opportunities for local retailers to fill in the gaps when the copper tone and banana boat lotions and sprays come off the shelves. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Members, any need for clarification of the testifier? Yes, Ms. Sugimura.
Nice seeing you. Thanks for being here. And the bill is, we often hear sunscreen, but the bill is also about sale of personal care products. So do you have a list of what those personal care products are, or is it only basically sunscreen that you're looking at?
I don't have a list, but I'd be happy to help you track down a list. I mean, there are, chapstick type of products is one that's commonly contains this product.
Environmental Working Group has a list.
She reminded me that one of the leading national and international organizations, EWG, Environmental Working Group, has that list. I didn't bring their materials today, but EWG, this is one of their top issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you.
We can look that up. Okay, thank you. Ms. Bonar?
Next testifier is Marge Bonar, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Cheryl King.
Aloha, Marge Bonar. I'm here with a very short message. Pass this bill. Get it onto the floor. Even waiting, every day that we wait is another day that we're killing coral polyps. The personal care, I think it's an excellent addition because whether you're aware of it or not, virtually all makeup now has got sunscreens, and that's something that they are advertising a little benefit to. And I was really sucked into that because that way I wasn't putting on other sunscreen. So now we've got to watch everything that is going on that might say gives you an SPF protection. Having been on the Great Barrier Reef and knowing that you are asked if you've brought sunscreen with you, what's in it and what it is, I would strongly urge you to leave the sale and use language into one of these bills, so at least there's the opportunity to send that message that you ought to be reading what it is you're slathering on your body. But we can't eliminate oil bleaching. As one small island state, we cannot do as much as I wish we could about all of the human factors that go into coral bleaching, but this is one small thing we can do, and every bit helps. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none.
Next testifier is Cheryl King, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Jenna Davis.
Aloha, everyone. Thanks so much for being here, and I'm just so proud of us that we're working on this somewhat complicated topic, but I really do think that we as a community and with you guys' leadership, we can do this, we can pass this. So everybody's done a really good job already of summarizing the importance of our coral reefs, and we're all here because of that, and love our environment, and just want to help this movement. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your testimony, and probably no need for clarification there. Thank you, Ms. King.
Next testifier is Jenna Davis, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Michelle Guffaro.
Aloha, my name is Jenna Davis. I'm the owner and founder of Raw Love Sunscreen. Raw Love Sunscreen is a zinc-based mineral sunscreen using organic, raw, plant-based ingredients packaged in plastic-free containers based out of here in Maui. For the past 15 years, I've studied marine biology, chemistry, traveled all over the world doing various ocean conservation projects, and working at several aquariums doing education, outreach, and underwater presentations to the public. I started this company in 2015 while working as a dive master on a tour boat after witnessing a devastating coral bleaching event at Molokini Crater. Coral bleaching is a coral stress response, in this case likely due to high ocean temperatures. I knew it was my duty to start eliminating local stressors to help the situation. In this particular case, I focused on many things, including sunscreen. As Dr. Craig Downs, one of the leading scientists doing research on oxybenzone and its effect on the ocean, has stated, any small effort to reduce oxybenzone pollution could mean that a coral reef survives a long, hot summer or that a degraded area recovers. With that, Raw Love Sunscreen, only using zinc oxide as its active ingredient, was born. I dedicated my life to ocean conservation, had no idea this would become my career. Well, come to find out, I'm not the only one who cares. This is now my full-time job that I follow with a passion and a huge drive to help the environment and our community. Coral reefs are some of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet. Coral bleaching is a global problem. We can minimize local stressors by only using reef-friendly sunscreens that contains no oxybenzone. Collectively, as a community, we can come together and make a difference simply by being conscious of the products that we choose to use and offer. I have received hundreds of emails almost daily at this point, thanking me for raising awareness and providing a healthy alternative, and also asking why isn't the state doing anything about this. I share my story with you to rest assured this ban will not hurt our economy, but in fact help it thrive. I'm in over 70 stores, 10 tour boats, and continuously told a few things from buyers. First off, in all 70 stores that I'm in, most locally owned, it is, if not the best-selling sunscreen, it's one of, if not the best-selling sunscreens on the shelf. Sales are good and morale is high that people are in fact already conscious about using mineral-based sunscreens. So the second thing they mention is that consumers are coming in and asking specifically for reef-safe sunscreens. The problem is many companies claim reef-safe but have oxybenzone in them. This term is not regulated by the FDA, so it really matters to look at the ingredients, or we can ban the sale. This ban would make it so there's no confusion and no added stressors to our environment. In the next few weeks, I'll be expanding to larger retail stores such as Whole Foods. My once competitors have turned to each other in order to make our voice stronger and our presence known. I'm working with all other larger-based mineral companies at larger retail stores to form a coalition to raise awareness. We are confident that together we can provide a selection of healthy sunscreens that consumers will have no problem making that switch. Many retail stores have already started a process of banning sunscreens with toxic chemicals. All the companies in the coalition have conducted in vivo and in vitro broad-spectrum testing in an FDA-accredited lab, which proves that mineral sunscreens act as a barrier and provide UVA and UVB protection. Not only do our sunscreens prove to be the highest level of protection, blocking harmful rays to ourselves, they're most environmentally conscious. I will continue to strive to create a well-known, certified, ocean-friendly business that will provide a variety of eco-friendly employment opportunities for our community here in beautiful Maui. Thank you for your time. Together as a community with this band, we can and we will make a difference.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And members, any need for clarification? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Our next testifier is Michelle Griffal, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Alicia Rittenberry.
Hello, I'm Michelle Griffel. I'm a volunteer board member of the Maui Nui Marine Resource Council. I just want to remind you that our mission is clean water, healthy reefs, and an abundance of native fish. None of those things will happen if we keep polluting our coral reefs with toxic chemicals. I've been working hard with boat operators as well, and I've placed over 100 gallons of reef-safe sunscreen on boats. One of the biggest obstacles to people using some of the reef-safe sunscreen is because it's very expensive. And so we've been working with a company that's able to produce gallons of it, and boat operators have to order 20 gallons at a time, but that's making them make a commitment to keep that on board and have it available so that their customers won't have to use reef-safe sunscreen non-reef-safe sunscreen. In contact with a lot of these boat operators, some of the opposition to my proposal has been people want to use their own sunscreen, and we can't tell them not to use it. We need this law so we can help the boat operators, and we can help hotels, and we can help all of us to save the reef by having a law. As I stated last time I spoke, in Mexico, there's a law. They're ahead of us. They've already created a federal regulation that says you cannot use these toxic chemicals in their reefs. They are trying to protect their reefs even before we are, which I find is a great precedent for us. I think we need to look towards that. And there's other areas as well, like the Great Barrier Reef. The boat operators really want to do it, but they have to be able to have somebody back them up, and they need the legislators to do that. There's also a group of us who've been working together hard and meeting on our own volunteer time to try and figure out how can we educate the public. Should we go to First Friday nights? Should we have educational booths? Should we do all this? And I have to tell you, it's a wonderful group of people. It's people from the Sierra Club, the Green Party, the Turtle Restoration Project, the Student Ohana for Sustainability. Many other people are in these groups that we're spending our time to try and meet to educate people, yet we don't have the backing of our legislators to help us do that. I feel like sometimes we're beating our head against the wall because we're trying so hard, we care so much, and we need your help. We need you to help us so we can say, yes, the state does support us. We really care about our reefs. Everybody cares about the reefs, and this is what we want to hear from you. So I totally agree that we need to pass this ban. Please help us. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Any need for clarification? Seeing none, thank you for your time today.
Next testifier is Alicia Rittenberry, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Sylvia Litchfield.
Aloha, I'm Alicia Rittenberry, interning with Rob Parsons and also the president of the Student Ohana for Sustainability, which is a school club at the Maui College. And I'm a student in sustainable science management. And the club already gave our testimony and full support for to send this to the state legislature, but I just wanted to also say that we very much support it happening on a county level as well. So we do support the restrictions of the sale of beauty care products containing oxybenzone or octinoxate within the county of Maui. That's all.
Thank you very much. Any need for clarification? Seeing none. Next testifier.
Next testifier is Sylvia Litchfield, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Adrian Raff Corwin.
Aloha. Thank you so much for being so receptive to environmental issues. It makes sense that Maui would lead the way. We live basically in a natural preserve. Of course, we would be the ones to lead the way. Thank you very much. one thing that people ask me sometimes, and usually, people are very receptive here, by the way. We do public outreach events, and people really want to help with this. But sometimes people ask, no, I thought it was global warming, or I thought it was sewage or groundwater or overfishing, or maybe it's the pesticide runoff that's causing the damage. Yes, all of the above. So we're not here to argue against any of those things, and we really want those to be addressed. But right now we're talking about oxybenzone, and how do you know that it's that versus other things? Well, I did have the opportunity to speak with Craig Downs, and I'm excited that he'll be here next month to talk to all of you too. And he's not just going out measuring sunscreen levels. He knows about the sewage problems. He knows about the temperatures. He's measuring all of this, I guarantee you, so it's fascinating to speak with him. And one thing that he said that really stuck out in my mind is how there are specific beaches where, yes, it was the oxybenzone that caused most of the damage, and it happened in the winter when the temperatures were low. So it wasn't global warming, and it was in areas that were not subject to sewage and brown water runoff. And they did measure all of these things very carefully, and it does show that there are certain of our most beautiful reefs that are getting pummeled by tourists and snorkelers, and they really do show that oxybenzone was the main culprit. And again, we're not saying that any of the other factors are not important. And it really is a mentality that as environmental protectors, we do know that everything is connected to everything. So if warm temperatures are preventing corals from thriving, and then in the winter when they could be recovering, they get hit with oxybenzone and then they can't reproduce. So each of these hazards has its own role to play and why our corals are not thriving as we hope they would. And of course, the corals are of economic importance. So whatever it costs will be worth it, because once these reefs are gone, they do not readily grow back. And the tourism and the fishing, we all depend on these reefs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none. Thank you.
Next testifier, Adrian Raff Corwin, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Beth Savitt.
Aloha kako, Adrian Raff Corwin for Sierra Club Maui. Thank you for letting me testify. I just wanted to also, of course, voice Sierra Club Maui's support for this legislation, specifically the phase out of the sale of these products. I won't go into the details. I think it's pretty clear from all the others that are supporting this phase out of why we're for this. But I would just like to echo some of the statements that Rob Parsons said about really this legislation has the potential again to once again put Maui on the map and sort of brand us as a sort of place that really cares about our environment. This legislation did not pass at the state level. We want to see that it really happens, and we can't wait for the state to do something about it. So I hope that you all will support this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Corwin. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none.
Next testifier is Beth Savitt, testifying on IEM 45, followed by J.C. Law.
Hello, Councilwoman Cochran. It's good to see you. Hello, council members. It's all good to see you. Well, Shaka Movement, of course, would love to see the banning of the sale of oxybenzone products. Oxybenzone has not been tested by the EPA for 40 years. This happened with something else you're going to see, and you see in the pharmacy right now. If you look at certain lotions, it now says paraben-free. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that. It's a little thing on the thing that says paraben-free. There are these chemicals called parabens in our creams. Maybe you know of them? And they were cheap. They came in the 50s and 60s and 70s from the petroleum industry. And man, they were just going to make it so easy for the cosmetic industry, the sunscreen industry. Guess what? They didn't test those for 30 years. My father, a dermatologist, along with his friends, noticed something. All the creams with parabens in it were causing a greater reaction. He was schooled in atopic dermatitis. I mean, he knew industrial eczemas. He knew something was wrong. He started patch testing his patients for these parabens and then would not give them and tell them not to do this. No one was doing that. All of a sudden, other doctors started. But it took 30 years. It's just in the last 4 years. My father was doing that in the 1960s. It's cheap, it's cheerful, they don't test. Now you have a choice. You can buy the parabens and hurt yourself or not. They're endocrine disruptors. This thing with oxybenzone is the exact same animal in a different coat. We've got something that's been on the market and been around. It hasn't been tested. We know it's an endocrine disruptor. It's linked to testosterone problems. It's linked, and we can bring it back to the herpes viruses in the turtles. This stuff is an adjuvant that actually allows atrazine 2,4-D to drive into our skins. Pediatricians and the APA are now saying, don't give it to 2-year-olds and don't put anybody under 2 in water with an oxybenzone. Whatever else is in that water will drive in their system. This is a very serious chemical, and the FDA has let it go. Let's not. Let's make it sexy for Maui to be oxybenzone free. At least let's make it so the boats can't do it, but I'd like to see it oxybenzone 3. It's something that companies are actually starting to change now.
2.5 minutes.
It's getting sexy for them. They're making this, they're putting it in great packages. We have a lot of product here. These companies aren't going to fall apart. Copper Tone, Hawaiian sunscreens, they're not going to fall apart, these companies. They know this is coming, so please don't worry about them. And Kelly, she's so right. You know, this oxybenzone killing our reef, this oxybenzone causing viruses to go into the turtles. These papillomaviruses, these big nodules on these turtles, this is helping cause that. We can't have that and invite tourists. And how many of you have seen the sunscreen layer in Waikiki Beach? It's horrible. It's horrible. And that can go in your skin too. So this is something we can really be on the right side of history with. We know that paraben and propylparaben and the methylparabens had the same kind of history. Well, let's stop them. Let's make these companies like Copper Tone go, oh, Jesus, we got to become gluten-free. Well, in this case, it's oxybenzone-free. So these companies will follow suit and gladly charge us more for it. But don't think they're going to be pleased when you're making this decision. So please consider banning these products. And I have a bunch of wonderful articles that I'm going to give each of you a packet about how 2,4-D is drawn in and about the papillomaviruses.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll take those handouts from you. Thank you very much.
Question?
Any need for clarification? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next testifier is J.C. Law, testifying on IEM 45, followed by Don Couch.
I'm J.C. Law from Kula. I just got back from summer vacation in Virginia. There's a little town, Fredericksburg, that relies on tourism as its major economic engine. And I tried to warn them that tourism can be a Pandora's box, as in this sunscreen contamination demonstrates. Mahalo for educating me and the public about the danger of oxybenzone on coral reefs. I put on sunscreen now after I swim the beach.
Thank you, JC. Any clarification? Seeing none.
The last testifier,
Mr. Couch here.
signed up to testify, Don Couch on IEM 45.
Aloha, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Don Couch, and I'm testifying on my own behalf. I'm taking some time off today to do this. I fully support the legislation on here. It's something that I've been looking into for a while, and I totally agree with the way it's going to go. My concern was I went to the state to testify on behalf of the legislation at the state, but the problem with the state legislation is that they only wanted tour companies to ban it and tour boats. Well, when you have Boss Frogs right next to Foodland, and you can't get it at Boss Frogs, but you can get it at Foodland, so I like this version much better. It's just you can't have it. a couple people have come to me and said, you know, I'd like to, when I'm out working in the yard, I like to put on the stuff that's easy to put on, because this reef-safe stuff is not quite as easy to put on as the other. But the problem with that is, and as the previous testifier said, he'll put his stuff on after he goes into the ocean. The problem is, if he sweats, it goes into the ocean anyway. So you got to be very, very careful, and I think the complete banning of the sale of this stuff. We still have the issue of people bringing their own sunscreen in, but, you know, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time. Let's just start. This one seems to be a no-brainer because the other stuff works. I use it all the time. And it works pretty good. It doesn't go on as easy, but it's well worth it to save the oceans, the reefs. You know, every little bit helps. So I'm in full support of it, and I urge you guys to support it as well. And thank you for bringing it up.
And thank you, Mr. Couch. I notice your baby soft skin at much more. Anyone clarification from our testifier? Seeing none, Mr. Couch. Thank you. Is that our last testifier?
I believe there's another testifier. That's the last one I have signed up.
Oh, Ms. Apana? Okay, and you can just fill out the forms after you're done.
Oh, I've already filled out.
Oh, you have, okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I would just like to say on behalf of Alma Cole that I support the banning of these chemicals. I've had my own personal ban of chemicals for many years now. And I'm just taken to something that Auntie Lonnie said about Kalepalepa Fish Pond. She said, oh yeah, we always used to go down there and we, pick the lemur over there. And she says, oh, but now, stink. Smell like suntan lotion. Oh, I don't want to eat that. So I hope this is a step in the right direction so that one day we can never be afraid to eat the lemur again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Apana. Members, any need for clarification? Seeing none. Thank you.
The last testifier signed up is Magdalena Wood.
Thank you.
REM 45.
Thank you. If there's anyone else that would like to sign up for testimony, please do so at the front desk. And have we received any notification from testifiers at our remote sites?
No, we have not.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Wood.
Aloha maino. My name is Magdalena Pu'u Wood. I'm testifying on item 45. I fully support this ban. We truly need this as the islands of the Pacific archipelago. At this time, we're losing out on so much. And I declare mentioning about the taste of the limu. It tastes like sunscreen. As a matter of fact, I'm a hunter, fisher, diver. I really depend on the aina. I depend on my resources. And I have to go far now. I could walk 10 minutes from my house and go and gather opi, opai, and different types of limukala, ogo, and I can't do that anymore. It's not good to eat. And the medicines that were medicines inside the ocean, they're not medicine anymore. We can't use it. Now I have to gather from Hana, Kenai, all the way to Kanaio. I have to go far now because all of the food and the medicine, it tastes, it smells like sunscreen. For me, I use natural sunscreen, coconut oil, and also coconut oil, but I don't recommend it to everyone, especially if you're sensitive. You will definitely get suntanned. But I feel like this is a positive, progressive movement and such an amazing momentum for Maui County to set the stones for the future and to make the statement of we as a county, we love our people, we believe in the future generations, and we want to guide them in such a way that it shows them to love yourself as you would love your mother, as God, and protect everything that you value, which is what's going to protect and take care of you. My kapuna would always say, the aina is only, the people is only as healthy as the aina. When the aina is sick, the people is sick, and it's going to continue on until we make that change. I believe in this body, I believe in this council, and everyone that's here. Let's do this for our future, let's do this for our kiki. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Members, any need for clarification of our testifier? See none. Thank you. And anyone wishing to testify? I see no one approaching, and we got no notification from the outside.
That's right.
Okay, so at this time, members, without objections, I shall now close public testimony. Thank you very much. And members, I'm going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back and we'll dive right into these bills and just get our job completed. We'll be for a 10-minute break. Aloha, will the Infrastructure and Environmental Management Committee please reconvene? Ms. Bonar. So we are now on IEM 45, oxybenzone, octinoxate, and their effects on the environment. And for today's meeting, members, you'll see there's two proposed bills have been posted. One is entitled A Bill for an Ordinance Establishing a New Chapter 20, blank, Maui County Code, prohibiting the sale of personal care products containing oxybenzone or octinoxate. And then the second bill is entitled A Bill for an Ordinance Establishing a New Chapter 20, blank, Maui County Code, prohibiting the sale and use of personal care products containing oxybenzone or octinoxate. In all other respects, the bills are identical, and the purpose of these proposed bills is to protect Maui's coral reefs, as all the testifiers mentioned, and the marine life by regulating the sale and or use of any skincare products containing either oxybenzone or octinoxate. Studies have shown that these chemicals have serious detrimental effects on our coral reefs as well as marine life. So long as visitors and residents continue to use these products and then they enter into the ocean, there will be an unending constant stream of these chemicals polluting our waters and damaging fragile ocean environment, including reef fish and the coral. The chemicals are commonly found in sunscreen, face creams, lip balms, and cosmetics. So a ban on the use or sale of products containing these chemicals will still leave consumers with suitable alternatives for broad spectrum sun protection. There's a wide variety of skincare products that do not contain oxybenzone or octinoxate, but do also provide excellent sun protection. So most of these products are zinc or titanium based. And on a side note, a growing number of these zinc or titanium based sunscreen products are made by Maui, as one of the testifiers was here explaining, or Hawaii based companies. So encouraging their use would be a huge move in support of our locally owned businesses. And this measure was passed, just a reminder, this measure was passed unanimously in the PIA committee to be included in the Maui County legislative package. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to see the same support here today. And the biggest discussion in PIA was whether to regulate the sale or the sale and use of these chemicals. So to allow further discussion on that topic, I have posted these proposed alternate bills, one on the ban of sale and one on the ban of sale and use. So at one of our November meetings, I do anticipate having resource people here available who will be able to address the more scientific-based questions if members that you might have. And it was brought up, his name is Craig Downs, who's pretty much the expert in this field. So before I open up the floor for discussion, I'd ask you folks to take a look of these two different proposed bills. And as I stated, they are pretty identical in their language, except that one is limited to prohibit use and the other is use and sale. So members, I'll go through this if you should need me to. Yes, Mr. Hokama.
No, I just
Waiting for you to allow us to pose questions, Chair.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So if you would allow me at this time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I don't have a problem with where we want to end up, Chair. For me, one of the areas that I'm glad you're taking the time is under the definition of personal care product. I know we focused on the application for beach or ocean-related activities. But since someone brought it up in testimony, when we say beautifying, promoting attractiveness and whatnot, I'm assuming we're talking about the whole world of cosmetics. So I'm assuming this is whatever is in a Macy's, a Sears, a Mary Kay program. I'm just trying to be clear on what is the parameters of personal care products, because I think part of what you're trying to do is also make our community educated on what does then come under this potential new law that we're going to consider this afternoon. So that's one of my questions is, how broad is this, and is there some understanding of what comes under personal care products? I don't know if maybe for men might be even our Under Armour deodorant applications. I don't know. But I'm assuming since people say like chapsticks, I might think, well, then does that mean lipsticks and all of this other feminine care product? I'm not sure. But I would like our community to be aware that if we pass this, this is potentially what will be under the parameters of consideration. So I just pose that as one question of if we can get information to share on what is the gamut of personal care products.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Mr. Hokama, for that. So, members, let me go through. I'll go, Mr. Hokama. I'm going to go through the bill, and we can. And so, at that time, unless Ms. Thompson, did you have anything to add at this time, just to in reference to Mr. Hokama's line of questioning at this time?
I don't have anything to add at this time. I have some general comments on the bills as a whole later if the committee wishes to hear them.
Okay, thank you very much. So, members, yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Hokama, just so we're clear exactly where we're at through this bill, in the purpose section, it's to promote, as you mentioned, the health, safety, welfare of Maui's coral reefs, marine life, by regulating the sale or the sale and use of oxybenzone and octinoxate, while at the same time promoting the use of alternative broad-spectrum sun protection products. And the definitions are here. So the most relevant definitions include the director, which is going to be Director of Environmental Management, or whoever the director authorized as a representative. Octinoxate and oxybenzone are specifically defined according to their chemical structure. Personal care product, Mr. Hokama, maybe we need more elaboration here, but it includes products intended to be applied to the human body for cosmetic, hygienic, and sun protection purposes. So I guess it is pretty broad in that sense, but it's whatever. There's, of course, multiple brands and companies and distributors and what have you, but I guess any of these products that have this particular two type of chemicals in it, we're seeking to ban the use of it and sale or sale too of it. But the one exemption is prescription drug. So the next definite words are prescription drug is defined according to HRS 328-1, which defines prescription drugs as one, any drug required by federal or state statutes, regulations, or rules to be dispensed only upon a prescription, including finished dosage forms and active ingredients subject to this section 328-16 or section 503B of the Federal Act. Or number 2, any drug product compounded or prepared pursuant to practitioner's order. So that's one way. I mean, we may have a smidgen of use of this product because it's been prescribed by your dermatologist or whoever is able to prescribe. The administration section states that the director shall adopt administrative rules related to this chapter within 1 year of the adoption of this ordinance. And then the prohibitions, section A prohibits the sale, or in parentheses it says, or sale and use, or use of personal care products containing oxybenzone, octinoxate. Section B prohibits the sale or the use of products containing either chemical at any county authorized or sponsored event. In other words, even if the final ordinance only prohibits the sale of oxybenzone or octinoxate, its use or distribution, even for free, at any county associated event would be prohibited. So as we want to lead by examples by, on our own behalf with that wording. Section C applies only to the version of the proposed bill prohibiting the use as well as the sale, and it states that no person shall use or apply any product containing oxybenzone or octinoxate unless the product is prescribed by a physician as stated in the exemption. So again, exemption, this section allows for the sale and use of products containing oxybenzone, octinoxate if product falls under the definition of prescription drug. Violations and penalties. This section adopts the penalties under Maui County Code 19.530.030, and I have copies. I think a lot of us are quite familiar with what this states. We can't find more than 1,000 and so forth. Thank you very much. Public information section, this part requires that restrictions on the sale or the sale and use of personal care products containing oxybenzone, octinoxate be printed on applications for county permits relating to the use of county facilities, county managed concessions, and county sponsored events and programs, because the intent is to educate the public about the prohibitions and why they are being implemented. One housekeeping matter on the version addressing both the prohibition of the use and the sale. This section needs to be amended from its current posted version to include the words "and use" after the word "sale," so that both of those are included. But at this time, members, so that I went through it pretty much verbatim. So we're very clear, and it's stated on record, and we're on the same page at this time. The floor is open for you folks, and thank you, Mr. Hokama, for already starting the questioning. If anyone else has further need for details, and then, of course, for Corporation Counsel to chime in at this time. But Mr. White.
Thank you, Chair. And as you know, I support this. But the question, Mr. Hokama's question made me wonder as to how many products use these two chemicals. Is there, or are there lists of the various products that include these two chemicals?
We don't have a per se list. Ms. Desjardins, did we have a chance to go into that, or was that the EG?
One of the testifiers
list?
mentioned the list.
I think EWG, I think, was an answer for Mr. Atai's questioning at that time. So I guess there is physically a list, and that can be forthcoming to this committee.
If the committee could provide us that list, I think that would be helpful, because I think all of us are very comfortable moving in on sunscreens, but if we're, I can't go home if my wife uses hardly any makeup, so I'm probably safe. But if I go home and say, oh, by the way, you're not going to be able to buy this stuff in Honolulu anymore or Hawaii anymore. Anyway, it would be helpful if we could get a list.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. That's a good question, and we'll follow up with that, Mr. White. Thank you so much. Mr. Hokama, and then Ms. Sugimura.
Chair, and just to be fair also, I would like to ask if you could assist us also with requesting if there is a list of those products containing zinc and titanium. One of my concerns is, we're saying we're encouraging the use of these alternatives. So I'd like to have a list of what we're potentially encouraging and the support documentation of why we would encourage the use of these products.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I was thinking 55 gallons of, you know how they always say in everything in moderation, or we just trying to coat something with, it's a good product, but maybe not with 55 gallons of it. But good question, Mr. Okama. We'll get more background on zinc and titanium also. And then Ms. Sugimura, you had questions?
So I was also curious about the, the products that we're talking about, but how would this be enforced? So seems like as we go along the journey with county, there's in many different facets of the things we try to do that we run into enforcement problems. So I'm just curious about that and what the committee's thought is.
Right. I mean, I think we always have issues with enforcement on things like, the cigarettes, butts off the beach ban, seat belts, no smoking in cars, and it starts with a lot of education on many different levels. And then, of course, we do, so to speak, self-police each other, of course. But there becomes a penalty, and I think one of the testifiers said on board the boats and these tour companies, there's not really a law to point to right now. This would surely help them to say, that's not allowed, please, get rid of it, or here, let us replace it with something that's good to use or allowed to use. So I think this just starts that process. But of course, it's not going to be fixed overnight. But I think it's just a step in that right direction where we all we start getting used to it, and we just start practicing it, commonly. So. Yes, Ms.
So thank you, Chair. The other question I had is, are there any federal laws that oversee this, or any agency? So if staff could look into that to do some research on the different layers. I do know that with HSAC or with the legislature, we are trying to get this before them. So that would then require if the people who came to testify could also support that at the legislature. But if you could look into what federal laws are existing, or what agency would, mandate this, and how do you stop manufacturers from using it that ship and sell to us, or how do how do we stop it?
Yeah, well, thank you. I believe it tried to pass through state, and then it didn't. So hopefully we can do something here at this point. So Mr. Atai, yes, you had your hand up.
Sure. On page 3 of this resolution.
The sale or the sale and use, or does it matter?
And I'm looking at sale.
Sale.
It refers to director. Director meaning the director of the Department of Environmental Management. So currently right now we have environmental management out of the office of the mayor, out of economic development. In a previous meeting, I had questioned Chapter 15 of our charter under Department of Environmental Management. When you're saying the director, the Department of Environmental Management, would this division fall under this? And then it would go into the previous question of Ms. Sugimura of enforcement, then getting recommendations from that division head to come up with plans of enforcement? Or are you?
So director is Department of Environmental Management, right, which currently is Stuart Stant.
Okay.
Right. So I don't know, were you thinking Rob Parsons, our environmental coordinator?
Yeah, that's
would have
right.
a hand in this?
That's why I need clarification is environmental coordinator division, which comes out of the mayor's office, which is through economic development, but yet this issue is environmental management, which should be, I interpret it through the charter, should be housed under Chapter 15. So what you're creating, wouldn't that fall under that?
Under Department of, Stuart Stant, that division.
Right.
Yes, that's what this is stating, and not environmental coordinator. Of course, Rob, interacts with all environmental things across the board via the administration. But this would be that particular department. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Ms. Thompson? I don't know. Do I want to ask if you have... Go ahead, Ms. Thompson. We have some things to chime in on.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep these a bit brief. So kind of preliminarily, I just received the ordinances last week and haven't had the chance for a full review. So these are comments, but I probably will have more for you as the item progresses. The FDA considers sunscreens over-the-counter drugs in addition to being cosmetics. The two types of chemicals that are being considered for this ban are both approved sunscreens by the FDA. The FDA obviously doesn't comment on environmental concerns. They're concerned with human health effects. Maui County would be the first jurisdiction that I could find in the U.S. to regulate sunscreens. As the chair noted, several measures were introduced in the last legislative session, and none of them passed. One of the measures was to provide funding for UH to look into this issue, specifically on Oahu, at Hanauma Bay and Waikiki, where the concentrations of tourist use and public use are greatest, and where you'd anticipate to see, significant effects. At any rate, none of those measures did pass. As a threshold issue for the county to pass any legislation, it needs the authority to do so, and that's found in the state Hawaii revised statutes. Generally, the authority we would look to HRS, it's section chapter 46, 1.5. The closest that I could find within that great long list of county jurisdiction would be section 13. It states each county shall have the power to enact ordinances deemed necessary to protect health, life, and property. And it kind of goes on. What I'm getting at is that I would need the opportunity to look further into seeing whether or not the county has the authority to enact an ordinance that primarily deals with offshore environmental issues, which is generally state DLNR, Division of Aquatic Resources territory. So there's that. This ordinance does implicate, as some of our other proposed legislation has done, the Commerce Clause or Dormant Commerce Clause. It affects interstate commerce. So ordinances need to have, they need to pass a few tests to be able to overcome a Commerce Clause challenge. I'm just raising it as an issue, but not giving you an opinion on it right at the moment. The science. Right now, we don't have any of the studies that have been referred to in testimony in the record. So obviously, I would encourage the committee to receive the scientific studies and for all of the members to take the opportunity to thoroughly review them. If you're facing a legal challenge, what you would be questioned on in court is what did you rely on to make your decisions. So you need to be very confident in the science behind your decision. As Councilmember Sugimura brought up, enforcement is going to be an issue. How will the public be notified that a use is illegal? Do we have sufficient enforcement personnel? How are we going to do it? Are we going to do beach patrols and interrogate people about what types of sunscreen they're using, and cite them on the spot, issue warnings? At any rate, just, how we're going to enforce this is kind of an obvious concern. There are, just some thoughts on the state legislation. There's some of the proposed legislation was for an outright ban. I don't know that it included OCTINOXATE. It seemed like they were mostly focused on OXYBENZONE. like I mentioned, one of the proposed state measures included funding for UH to further study this issue, and that may be something that the county could consider. Regarding education, or public outreach, that's perhaps another avenue of moving toward these goals. For example, we had a few people here testifying today from the Maui Marine Resources Council, and our office recently reviewed and approved a grant from Office of Economic Development. It was for $1.5 million, and that covered various of their projects and outreach efforts. I did take a look through it. I didn't notice that there was outreach related directly to sunscreen or oxybenzone. I may have overlooked it, but I didn't see it in a brief review. And finally, in addition to inviting the scientists or other experts to give you information, I'd recommend requesting that Department of Land and Natural Resources Division of Aquatic Resources send someone to just give you the information on what their efforts are and where they're headed as far as their efforts. And that's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson. Before I open the floor up, I just had a couple quick questions. So because I'm just trying to figure out, we've passed, in my mind, quite similar type of bans per se, like the styrofoam ban, for example. What was there an HRS type ruling that allowed us to do that ban? And what is different with this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there is a specific portion of that HRS Chapter 46.1.5 that deals with refuse. So we would have done that under that authority. And also there's some other, the one that I mentioned earlier, protect health, life, and property. The styrofoam, I think there were some, the basis was also related to human health and the health of island citizens. So not just litter, but also human health.
Okay. And this seems similar as stated by people. And then the other members real quickly is I know enforcement's always such a sticking point with everything that we do, but we've passed bills and laws and everything without a true, I guess, so to speak, enforcement plan in place, like a fail-proof enforcement plan. So how is this different? For, this butts off the beach, the styrofoam, things like that. I mean, there wasn't clearly, this is the exact steps everyone from state to our county police are going to do. We passed it and we said, we're going to adjust it as it comes. At least now we have a law in place to tell someone that is not allowed, please stop doing it. So I just wondering how this is different in that light.
Thank you, Chair. The enforcement issue that I brought up is not necessarily a legal issue from, per se enacting an ordinance where you don't have the funding or the personnel to actually enforce it. So it's probably more of a management or an operational concern. From a legal standpoint, we would face challenges from the manufacturers of sunscreen and the distributors. So.
Okay. We overcame that with styrofoam, though. Okay. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr.
Sure.
Guzman.
Thank you. Let me give you a shot at least my opinion on how it would differentiate. So when we're talking about products that are being sold, and that would be the styrofoam things, you would be bringing in the Commerce Clause. It would trigger the Commerce Clause because it's the Federal Commerce Clause dictates all commerce that goes interstate. And these products are interstate, just like the styrofoam. And so to, I guess, preempt a legal challenge, we would via case law, it's been recognized that we as a council, the legislative body, needs to put on the record the reasons why we believe that it will affect public health, property, life, refuse, things like that, that would allow us to sustain a challenge or at least be defensible against a commerce clause. So just like what we did in the styrene cases, or the styrene bill, we presented scientific facts on the floor, we had panels, and that was all received into the record, which then gave us a basis to say there's a nexus of us to rely on that this is basically going to be a bill that would help or at least protect us from things that are unhealthy and protect our property. What Corporation Counsel is indicating with the authority, do we have authority under section HRS 46 1.5 to say that this actually this bill can go into a jurisdiction that the state regulates, which is the reefs. So we really don't have that jurisdiction, or at least it needs to be opined or at least determined when in fact we can regulate within the reefs and the state jurisdiction, because at some point the state may come in and say, just like the GMO bill, the state may say, hey, you know what, that's our jurisdiction. So I think what we need to do is make sure that we are taking our time and doing our homework, and when we're passing bills, to make sure that we do have the jurisdiction and we do lay the foundation through resources, independent resources on the floor to receive science and to receive the, I guess, the legitimate purposes of relying on health, life, property, those type of legitimate purposes, government legitimate purposes to sustain a challenge from a commerce clause challenge, because we are going to be dealing with big corporations, banana, whatever, all those different types of sunscreen people. So I think if we take our time and make sure that we hit every I, dot every I, cross every T, we're going to be, it'll be a strong bill. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And real briefly, so the next meeting, I'm going to get a panel just like the styrene, and all the scientific proof and information and the questions that were asked today, lists and things of that nature too. So we're very clear and all our information is at hand for us to make our best decision. So thank you for that. Mr. Hokama?
Chair, thank you for sharing your intentions. I for one appreciate it. So I know where you're trying to take the committee. I would just ask then if, for your consideration, since you already brought up DLNR from the state, you would also consider Department of Health. I think they'd be one of the agencies that would be involved if we move this to a statewide policy, as well as DCCA. I think from a consumer and Commerce and Consumer Affairs, I see those agencies being involved in enforcement. I see them having the positions and the type of personnel to assist us in making sure we can regulate and properly enforce. I don't see the county being the enforcement arm of a policy that I hope would be statewide and just countywide. So I would ask you to bring those, because I think those state agencies have a lot more clout that they can utilize than we give them credit for, or they haven't utilized. So I think if you would consider having them as part of our resources, I would appreciate your consideration in that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. White.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate Mr. Hokama's comment, because I think since we are sending a recommendation for a state bill on this item, I think you could do a good job of paving the way with some of these departments that are going to be either in support or opposition of the bill when it gets to the legislature. I think it would be a really a good move to bring them here ahead of time and let them hear from us and let us hear from them what their concerns or objections might be, or their support for the measure. So just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Atai.
Chair, in regards to the concept of kuleana, responsibility, in regards to the concept and understanding of aloha aina, I keep on saying this, so goes the environment, so goes our tourist industry. And so we heard, 20 plus testifiers talk about the effects and affects of this OXYBENZONE and OCTINOXATE effects onto the reef. And so that affects our economy, affecting the reef, changing the reef will affect our economy of tourism. But above and beyond that is also human health and those who live here, those who gather food off that reef. Many of us eat seaweed or eat limu. Many of us come from different ethnic races. Every ethnic race consumes 3 or 4 or 5 different seaweeds that come off of the reef. What is rubbish to one ethnic race is a delicacy to the other race. What one race consumes in the soup, the other race consumes in a raw, chopped up form. South Maui, Kihei, Ma'alaya, you only can find the Ogo South Shores or Leeward Shores. Very rarely will find it on your North Shores. Different limu, different coastline, different bays. I was enlightened by the last 2 testifiers, Ms. Apana and Ms. Pu'u, who talked about their family's kuleana of gathering food, collecting food. Your statement about the involvement of the FDA getting involved if it affects human health. These chemicals affect the reef, maybe affect the seaweed that is consumed. These chemicals affect our lifestyle. The jurisdiction may be in the ocean. Yes, it could be the state's jurisdiction, but I think we can be the catalyst to carry that responsibility to protect human health via the consumption of what comes off this reef. You can go secondary and tertiary. Besides the seaweed, what affects the fish that we eat from these chemicals? So studies, if the university is so willing to do so, I would say not only study the reef, study the effects and affects onto our food source that feeds our people. So yes, with the FDA, human health, life does get affected by this. Whether we take it with a state package, I say that we have a kuleana. We start here and hopefully can make it become a state law. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Atai. Great perspective. Members, any other questions or comments at this time? Yes, Mr. Hokama.
Chair, I thank Mr. Atai for his words that he shared. I for one appreciate it because I think we tend to forget that we do have some personal control over whether we want to use the word kuleana or our areas of responsibility. It's interesting, hearing the testimony about how to deal with some of this major issue of environmental impact of sunscreen. But I grew up in an era, luckily enough, I think Mr. Atai would recall, The old folks would say then, rest the area. Kapu. The best ways is to ban it from everybody, including human beings, from using the area. We kapu the area. We let it rest. No harvesting, no visiting, no nothing. Allow the area to rest and recover, and then eventually open it up back for human benefits again. But that's something that the culture has practiced for centuries. I don't know why we don't consider it currently, whether we do it a Hamoku program or a Lahele program. Well, I think the old folks was pretty smart with the kapu system, and I still think it can work today. And we don't need to be very fancy or anything about it. If we say we believe in the culture, then let's practice the culture. And I think kapu is one of the easiest ways to do smart land conservation within a reasonable time frame. And just say from point A to point B, it's kapu, forbidden. Even to people, forbidden. We're going to rest this for its benefit. And we open at the appropriate time for everybody's benefit. So I just share that, because we can do something sooner than later and not wait for all these fancy studies and anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Great point, Mr. Hokama. Members, any need for further discussion? So at this time, well, first off, what is the thought here with the consensus at this time, if there is? We want to look at sale, just the sale, or are we veering more towards sale and use, as Mr. Chairman White had brought up during PIA committee? And that's why the both are here today in front of us. So I kind of wanted to get a feel of which way we really want to start focusing on. But in November, we'll have a full panel discussion, and thank you for all the input of who you'd like to see as a resource. Yes, Mr. White.
Thank you, Chair. The reason I support both the sale and the use is that we have a significant amount of visitors using our waters, either by charter boat or off the beach. And I think it's important, even though we don't have an enforcement arm that is assigned to it, I think the boat operators and folks that take people into the ocean and the folks that operate the beach concessions at each hotel would be very much in favor of enforcing whatever we pass. And I don't think that they would have a problem explaining that if you brought this with you, you still can't use it, and that we have something else that provides an alternative. And I think the vast majority of visitors would respect that. I think most of us, when we travel, want to know what our kuleana is in a foreign land or a place that we're not familiar with. So I think, enforcement is always an issue, but I think that if we do both the sale and the use, that we have a resident population working in a variety of industries, interfacing with visitors, that would be more than happy to assist with the enforcement with respect to the visitors. I think we have enough locals that we would be more than happy to help educate their families and others as well. But I think we need to do both, not just the sale.
Yeah, okay, very good. Yes, Mr. Tai.
Chair, I'd also like to have more time to do more due diligence. I know that no other county throughout the entire country has enacted such an ordinance. However, knowing that the Great Barrier Reef in Australia and places in Mexico, if we could gather how is their law structured and how are they enforcing that law, and to kind of compare to see how we could either adapt and adopt realistically if their laws would fit into our local laws, to kind of look at that, because we're kind of paving the way in that, but we have the benefit of other countries having that ordinance. So.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And I think people look to us as the progressive county to take the first step on a lot of things. So Okay, so I guess we're looking to go the maximum, which would be sale and use at this time. So members, without objections, I will be deferring the item. Thank you very much, and we'll definitely look forward to posting this once again in November when we can get a whole panel and broader discussion with the experts at hand for us. So members, the next item is IEM 47, and this is, and well, I got Director Good here, Director from Public Works. Thank you for being here with us and waiting. IEM 47, it's a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 16.18B, 16.20B, and 16.26B of our Maui County Code, and this is relating to fees. And the committee is in receipt of County Communications 17-362, and it's transmitting the bill that I just read. This is a housekeeping bill, really, which proposes to clarify the fees assessed by Department of Public Works in the electrical, plumbing, and building codes by removing the specific fee amounts as currently provided for in the ordinances, and substituting in reference to the fees as set forth in the annual budget ordinance instead. So at this time, I'd like to recognize we have Public Works here, and also I believe Ms. Thompson has some points to make too. But Mr. Good, did you want to go first, or you want to have Ms. Thompson begin? Whichever you folks junk in a poll.
Okay, good afternoon,
All
Chair.
right. Aloha.
Members, David Good here, Director, Department of Public Works. It came to our attention after budget into July that while we amended the budget for FY17 as relates to fees in these areas, building, plumbing, and electrical, in some areas, typically in the department we've done this over the last few years, and most of the time we find that we haven't adjusted a lot of these fees for like 9 or 10 years. And all our fees in the budget are called for in various ordinances. And over a long period of time, we've been trying to remove instances in the ordinance where it says the fee shall be X. Right, and prefer to say, there shall be fees as established by the budget. We didn't go back and look to see if that language is in, that general language, I should say, was in those codes. And so we found that the fees that were enacted were inconsistent with some fees that were called out in the code in all three, building, plumbing, electrical. So the purpose of the bill that's before us today is to clean up the sections of the code to say that the fee shall be as established by the annual budget. And so it's a housekeeping measure. I'm sorry we missed it at the first go around during budget, but we're here to clean it up today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Good. Ms. Thompson, did you have comments on this?
Thank you, Chair. So the ordinances have been reviewed by our office and signed off, and so I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, any need for further clarification, questions for department administration at this time? Mr. White.
I don't think there are any questions. The bill looks pretty straightforward. We're just replacing some set fees with the flexibility to set the fees in the annual budget ordinance.
Yes, pretty much that's what it is. Okay, if there's no further discussion needed, yes, Mr. Hokama?
I know there was a concern or a comment in testimony, Chair. I would just say, if we choose to make it part of the annual budget, then at least once a year, Budget Committee will review fee structure. The way it is now, unless there is a proposal to change, the fee could be there for 10 years and we wouldn't take a look at it if it's part of the code, unless we're updating the code. So that's the plus and minuses of the potential change. I would say Council will have a more frequent review, as well as the community, to look at the fee structure on an annual basis if we move this forward. That's the only advantage for the community's part. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Mr. Okama. Well, members, if there's no questions or further comments.
Your recommendation?
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to recommend passage on first reading of this proposed bill entitled A Bill for an Ordinance amending Chapter 16.18B, 16.20B, and 16.26B, Maui County Code relating to fees.
I so move.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Okama and seconded by Ms. Sugimura. The floor is now open for further discussion if needed. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Looks like we have 7 ayes, 0 noes, and motion carries. Now we're going to jump into IEM 10. I think you're still here for us, huh, Director? No. Oh, we got Rowena Dagandaya? Okay. IEM 10, which is Lower Nahiku Bridge, Health and Safety Concerns. And it looks like we have Ms. Deputy Director of Public Works, Ms. Dagandaya. So members, this is County Communication 14-308, transmitting the matter of health and safety of the Lower Nahiku Bridge. And this matter was last discussed on January 30th here at IEM Committee. Ms. Dagandaya provided an update from Department of Public Works. Corporation Counsel also provided some feedback on what steps would be required for committee. And we're to recommend to county to take ownership of the bridge and then replace it, or possibly make an emergency request to the state to indemnify the county in the event of a lawsuit involving the bridge if we were to make necessary and immediate repairs, but not take steps to own it. There are also discussion about ownership of the bridge, whether IEM owns, or not IEM, if the county owns, I don't want to own it, the bridge, and if so, whether it had a responsibility to repair and maintain the bridge. And since that time, we received a confidential attorney-client privilege memorandum from Department of Corporation Counsel on this matter, which is dated February 17th, 2017. If members wish to explore any of the issues raised by Corporation Counsel, we can do so in executive session. Before we move in that direction, I would like to have Deputy Director Rowena Dagandaya present with us today, along with Director Good, and I would like to ask either of them if they have comments that they'd like to share with us right now.
Chair, at this time, we don't have any additional comments, but the file does have our latest update as of January 13, 2017.
Okay. Oh, sorry, that was January 13, 1-3 or 3-0?
1-3, Chair. This
January
is
13.
in,
Okay.
I think it's in the file. It's one of our letters to the committee.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Director Good, did you have anything to add? No, not at this time already. So then now we have Corporation Counsel. Do you have anything to update in open session?
We might be able to get to quite a bit of the discussion in open session.
Okay.
So there was a title report that is part of Public Works submission to you. The title report is December 2014, and the conclusion was that the ownership of this bridge area is undetermined. So there's no indication it's owned by the state or by the county. If there was an indication that it was owned or laid out by either one of those entities, it might be considered an old government road. We have a Maui County Code chapter that deals with maintenance of old government roads. However, it doesn't look like this particular section of the road falls into that category. Another caveat to that is that the old government roads chapter doesn't deal with bridges. So it's just surface roadways. There is a Hawaii revised statute. It's 264-1, subsection C, that deals with abandoned private roadways. And let me just read to you a little section of that. So a private party if, assuming that we have no indication the government owns this particular section of the road, a private party may have been deemed to have surrendered for public use roadways, including bridges, if no act of ownership by the owner of that road or bridge has been exercised for 5 years. And then it goes on a little bit. So if we went through this process to basically adopt this section of the road, it would become our road and liability would fall to us just as it does with any other county road or highway. Voluntary maintenance. We have maintained this bridge in the past. I think there was a resolution from 1970 that the council at that time encouraged the Department of Public Works to do some maintenance on the bridge. So I think at that time it was done, and periodically it may have been maintained by the county. I know that the upper section of the road has been maintained, but as far as from the bridge down to the coastline, probably a little less frequently, and not at all, I think, in recent years. When you take continued responsibility for an item, you might be seen at some point to have exerted ownership control over it. So basically, the more we're involved with it, the more it potentially becomes a county bridge or roadway. So that's a consideration you'd want to weigh going forward. And that's about what I have really for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thompson. Members, any questions that we'd like to pose? Or yes, Mr. Atai?
So the landing, who owns it?
Chair, and Councilmember Atai, the landing, I believe, is owned by the state. Okay. So from the County of Maui I don't believe has any property beyond on the Makai side of the bridge.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Atai. Yes, Ms. Sugimura.
So I'm just curious if anybody knows, we had 2 testifiers from the community this morning, but I wonder how many people live in that area. Maybe Mr. Carroll knows that are affected by this bridge, and what kind of condition is it in? I think one of the testifiers said that there was a community meeting happening sometime this month, and so they were hoping that they could have that community meeting first before any action was taken, although the second testifier was, he thought maybe a wooden walking bridge would be preferred rather than October 26th, was the meeting. So how many people live in the area and how many people get affected?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sugimura. I believe, Mr. Carroll, you had an answer to that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give a long answer away. There's been so much discussion in the community all this time. I even brought Mr. Cole Kelly, who just passed away, made arrangements for me, him, and Corporation Counsel, and I think Mr. Good was there to discuss a bridge too, along with one of the other owners that was over there. This other man that owns property was trying to get there. I've also met with members of the community that was just like a path going down without traffic. So the members actually wanted to go over there and build a bridge and give it to the county. There's no real consensus in the community on exactly what they would like. There's been no one thing brought before us that we could really say, okay, the community wants this. The last, when I was pursuing it, the last thing I had from Corporation Counsel was until it was determined that the county had site control, that they were not willing to spend county funds. They could not okay spending county funds on something that we don't own. And I don't think I should say anything more after that. If you want to go executive session, there were some other things too that came up. But it's just been a real mess that's dragged on and on. Nobody has come up with any viable proposal to either repair the bridge or put a footbridge or anything else. And the last correspondence I had was that until site control was determined, and nobody has called me up or given me any further information after that, that the county has site control and they are able to go there and use county funds to do anything to the bridge. So as far as I know, and the information has been given to me, we can't do anything until the county, and I said they were going to, there were several owners of the property over there. EMI was one, and there were two other owners, and that needed to be clarified, and EMI was willing to give us permission to do what we wanted over there, but other two owners don't live on Maui, and nobody in the administration has gotten back to me and given any further information on that. That's the last information that I had. And that's really all I can pass forward. There's other things that I could bring up, but I don't think it'd be appropriate open session.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Youngmore, was your question about the bridge and then how many people are affected, like trying to get to their property? Mr. Carroll, I don't believe anybody technically lives on the Makai side of that bridge, right?
Sorry. Nobody lives on the other side of that bridge.
Right.
There's one man that brought property over there that wanted to build on the other side, but nobody's had a house down over there in my living memory, which is pretty long. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, so, yeah, as last I was down there, I don't think anybody was living past the bridge, so people go for sightseeing and things, fishing and stuff, but was there any other questions, or does the body feel a need to go into executive session on this to get further detailed information at this time? I mean, last I recall, and unfortunately I don't believe, I think, did you chair the last meeting this was held? Vice Chair Guzman, I think. But anyways, last I recall, there's a temporary bridge of sorts sitting somewhere over there, out there somewhere, and we were thinking installing it, and I think it was going to cost, almost $750,000 for this temporary permanent thing. And then it was the whole liability issue. Should we do this? And we don't really have full ownership and things of that nature. So all I know is that it's been sort of stopped there, and I don't think we really have concrete or, answers to solving this issue today anyways. So I'm not sure, did I overstep some bounds in closed session? No, okay. Well, good. That's kind of like my memory of this area, and I don't know about that comment that the testifier had mentioned about a public meeting coming up on October 26th. Mr. Carroll, are you aware of such a meeting? And perhaps
I am not. Usually, Dawn Alona from our office attends the meetings for me over there, and I didn't have any information about the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I know the Haiku Community Center is a whole other subject matter, but, this is definitely an issue, and I guess if it can be discussed, but. So at this time, members, I did set up the meeting for executive if we so desire to, but it's not mandatory at this time. If you folks are okay, we just defer this for now, and we'll get back to it when we have more more stuff to really work on and sift through. I think, in the end, the last I recall, there was a huge dollar amount if we wanted to really solve this in a good way, with full vehicular traffic once again, foot traffic, whatever. But at this time, those monies aren't sitting around for us to tap into. And I think for the discussion with the community, I think that's what they wanted, to know where we're at. And we don't have answers, then we don't have answers. That's all we can give at this time. So members, without objections, I'll defer this item. Thank you very much. And I believe this is the last item we have on our agenda today. So, members, thank you so much. Administration, departments, thank you very, very much for being here with us. And this meeting is adjourned.